Yes, Your Grace, I'll be very brief, because I know we are also keeping to military time. Your Excellency, I think I said what I wanted to say yesterday when we were at Nyayo Stadium. A lot of people have said a lot about my father, His Excellency President Mwai Kibaki. And the tributes have been accurate, they have been heartfelt, and we have received them as a family in the manner that they deserve. But I think I might just want to give a bit of insight into, should I say, the more relaxed side of President Mwai Kibaki. Because the tributes have been there, but they basically focused on his, public life, his tenure as a president. But he was so much more than that. Or at least those Kenyans, I would say, who are above 55 years of age and had the privilege of growing up under the parentage of this generation. In my estimation, this was Kenya's finest generation. This was a generation that built this country. The men and women who, should we say, came into government in 1963 when we got independence, dedicated their lives to the service of this country. And that is why you see, in Kenya in the 1960s and 1970s, Kenya was actually really like a paradise. We had tremendous economic growth, we had good security, we had a lot of optimism, and all the other things that go with being a young, dynamic nation. My experiences with Mzee, obviously, first and foremost, were as son to father. And my earliest, I'll just give, Your Grace, I'll just give one or two examples of how I related with my dad. My dad, I think, my whole life has been almost like a game of cat and mouse. My dad wanted me to pursue a life of excellence like he did. And in many instances, he felt that I fell short of that. An example is when I was in Form 2. Now, my grades, or academic grades in St. Mary's in Form 2, were not, should we say, representative of a son of Mwai Kibaki. The Form 1 grades were quite terrible, and the Form 2 grades were actually abysmal. So I went to take my father. We had this thing where we got our school reports, and each one of us would go into his sitting room because he had his sitting room, and we would sit with him and give the reports. Judy gave her report. Judy, by the way, at that time she was in Form 3. I think she was almost a straight A student. Maybe she got 1 or 2 Bs, but the rest were As. Then we had David. David in school, from primary school to high school, he was an academic genius. I think in academics he took after his father. Tony, that time you were a small boy, so you were not involved in this. But my mother made it a point that I be the last one to give my report. Mzee looked at my report, and I remember him going back up to the top of the report where your name is, because I think he was wondering, this must be a mistake. This cannot be my son. Then he asked my mother, these grades, which I will not repeat here, please, I need to keep some dignity. He said, this is out of what? Is it out of 50 or is it out of what? My mother said, this is percent. So Mzee gave me one of those looks, which I'm sure, Your Excellency, you've come across those looks when he's very angry, because he doesn't shout, but he gives you one of those piercing looks. And I said, you know, Jimmy, let me tell you, let's do this. Forget about this school business. Let me take you to Naromoro, our farm there. Look after my cows, and I'll pay you a small wage. It won't be for free. And I think when he saw me actually contemplating that, he told my mother, you know, Lucy, Mathare Mental Hospital is not far away from Othaya. Shall we take this boy then to get his head examined so that we can establish that it is not his brain that has a problem, he's just lazy. And I can tell you, he was quite annoyed, and he told me, you know, what we're going to do now, we're going to talk to the priest at St. Mary's, and you're going to repeat Form 2. And I was like, repeating Form 2, and I've been bullying those Form 1 kids. That's not an option. But to cut a long story short, I studied like crazy, and my third term grades were actually very, very good, quite respectable. But he told me, you know, if you don't maintain those grades, you are going to be forced to repeat, and you'll be forced to repeat without warning. So throughout the rest of my high school, I decided to apply myself, because you never knew when the report actually met his standards, or whether you'd be forced to repeat. You know, my father was a lecturer, my mother was a teacher trainer, so they took academics very seriously. And I can say that they taught us that we were privileged to go to some of the best schools in Kenya, and we should not actually squander those opportunities. Like I said, my life with my father was a game of cat and mouse. Like any teenager, I think the relationship between a father and a son can sometimes be misconstrued to be one of disrespect or not respecting enough. But I really respected my father. At one point, I remember he told me, you know, Jimmy, you keep going out and coming home 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Why can't you come home at a respectable time? Respectable people are home by midnight. He told me it's only crooks and vagabonds who go out parading at all hours of the night. So he told me, from now on, when you go out, be home by 1 a.m. the latest. And I told him, yes, Dad. The following weekend, I went out. I knew he was going to Othaya. So normally when he came to Othaya on Saturdays, he came back on Sundays. But that day he came from Othaya very early in the morning. And I was walking into the house. I saw through, you know, there was a split in the curtains, and this was at 3 a.m. I saw Mzee sitting there. I was like, oh my goodness, what is going to happen now? And before I knew it, he had gone and he had opened the front door, and he told me, Jimmy, remember what I told you? Get in the house. Now when I looked at Mzee, I was like, you're standing in the doorway. How am I going to get in the house when you're standing in the doorway? So what am I going to do? I decided to call my mother, because there was no way I was going anywhere near him before my mother was there. And when my mother came downstairs, Mzee told me, if you ever repeat that again, we are going to have some serious issues. And I can tell you from that time forward, I really followed his instructions. Mzee was many things to me. Obviously, first, he was my father. He was a disciplinarian. But above all, he was a role model. He was one of the finest people I have ever known. I want to take this opportunity in behalf of you all, and like His Grace said, to say a big thank you to His Excellency, President Mwai Kibaki. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.